St. John Neumann and the founding of St. Peter and Paul Church in Williamsville, New York. When we think about St. John Neumann, the image that is most often associated with him is that of a bishop. John Neumann was Bishop of Philadelphia from 1852 to 1860. Long before he became a bishop, however, this humble priest ventured from his European homeland to a remote western frontier. He began his priestly life serving a small community of faithful believers in the rural village of Williamsville, New York. Then he spread the gospel message throughout several western New York communities, often hiking or riding through harsh wilderness and dusty roads. His impact on the Niagara region would live on for generations to come. On March 28, 1811, our beloved saint was born and baptized in the obscure mountain village of Prokotitz, Bohemia. St. John Neumann lived as a quiet boy along with his 4 sisters and a brother. John, the third of the 6 children, from his earliest years exhibited rare qualities that prompted many a remark for his pious character and gifted intelligence. His was a probing mind, preoccupied even at a tender age with philosophic wonder about everything in God's creation. And from the time he learned to read, he could hardly be pried away from a book. John Neumann seems to have been blessed with a special grace from his childhood. As a young boy, regularly joining his mother at daily Mass, he showed fervent love for the Holy Sacrifice. So advanced was he in catechetical studies that by special privilege he was permitted to receive First Communion and Confirmation with boys 2 years his senior. Called to the religious life, Neumann entered the Diocesan Seminary of Budweis on All Saints' Day, 1831. There he spent 2 of the happiest years of his life. He so distinguished himself in all subjects that he was allowed to take minor orders at the end of his first scholastic year. St. John Neumann then studied theology at Charles Ferdinand University at Prague in 1833. Unfortunately, the date of Neumann's ordination was pushed aside as the bishop became ill. Since Bohemia had an abundance of priests, the ordination was not rescheduled. A kind priest who encouraged Neumann's plans and who knew the urgent need for German priests in America advised the saint that since it would be at least 6 months before he could be ordained at Budweis, he should set out for the New World immediately and receive holy orders from the Bishop of Philadelphia. Thus, in the early morning of February 8, 1836, John Neumann braced his youthful courage, and, sparing his family painful goodbyes, he quietly slipped away from home to find his way all alone to America and to a destiny of spiritual greatness. The trip across Europe, a large part of it made on foot, continued through the season of Lent. The saint carried with him very little money, and even less certainty as to how he would arrange for passage to America. On April 20th, after somehow having raised just enough money to buy passage, St. John Neumann boarded a crowded ship for America, and at last he was on his way to his new home. In 1836, there were 36 priests for the 200,000 Catholics in New York and New Jersey. Consequently, when John Neumann arrived that year, he was wholeheartedly welcomed by Bishop John Dubois. On June 19th, Neumann was ordained a subdeacon by Bishop Dubois at St. Patrick's Cathedral. On the 24th, he was ordained a deacon. He was ordained a priest on June 28th, 1836. Even before his arrival in America, the bishop had selected Neumann to serve Western New York. Only 3 of the priests in the New York-New Jersey diocese were German. This shortage was felt most sorely in the vast parish of Buffalo, spreading over some 900 square miles from Lake Ontario down to Pennsylvania. For there was but 1 priest to administer to all Catholics scattered throughout this broad frontier area. And so, only 3 days after his ordination, little Father Neumann wearing a suit bought for him by a kind priest, was sent on his way to Buffalo. On July 12, 1836, the holy man finally reached Buffalo, that crude yet growing town burgeoning in the midst of the sparsely settled frontier region. The Catholics here, though heavily outnumbered by bitterly anti-Catholic Protestants, were still too numerous for their sole priest, Father Alexander Pax. Father Pax proposed that one priest should tend to the populous town of Buffalo itself, and the other to families and settlements in the outlying districts. Father Neumann agreed, insisting on having the latter grueling assignment. There were 400 Catholic families, mostly immigrants, scattered throughout the 500,000 acres of densely wooded countryside in Father Neumann's portion of the parish. In most instances, the distance from the cabin of one poor household to the next was 10 or more miles. And where there were enough Catholics in an area to erect a small church, as in Niagara or Batavia, it would mean a hike of as much as 50 miles for the little priest to say Mass. On July 13th, Father Neumann said Mass in Buffalo at St. Louis Church, referred to at the time as the Lamb of God Church. Later that day, Father Pax took him to Williamsville, where he would become the first pastor of the parish of Saints Peter and Paul, the second Catholic church to become established in western New York. The Catholic community in Williamsville consisted of about 40 families. Non-Catholic neighbor Ozeel Smith donated a small parcel of land for a chapel on the northwest corner of Main Street and Grove Street. The original chapel was built on the site of what is now the cleaner's establishment across Grove Street from the present church. The rear wall of the present cleaning establishment was a wall of the original chapel. When Father Neumann celebrated his first Mass in that chapel, it still had no floor or roof or front door. A temporary altar and a few rough benches showed that the church was being used. The non-Catholic neighbors were distrustful of Catholics with their strange rituals. And now the Catholics had a live priest and the beginnings of a stone building. Anti-Catholics took advantage of the unfinished building during Mass by shouting and pitching rocks over the walls into the congregation. But whatever the hardships, Father Neumann was determined that not one soul entrusted to his care would be neglected, for he fully realized his priestly responsibility for these unfortunate immigrants, strayed or cut off from the faith of their homelands. Indeed, the little saint wanted to do just that, to help convert and save all souls in America. It was principally for this purpose that he had come to this Protestant country, and now, arrived on his long-sought field of missionary labor, he set hard to work at the task. The young pastor, seeing the need of the children for both secular and religious instruction, now assumed the duties of a teacher. He held classes first in the home of a parishioner and then in a small rented building. Toward the end of the year 1836, the church building at Williamsville was finally completed, and the young priest could turn his attention more regularly to the other stations assigned to him. There was North Bush, current-day Kenmore, about 5 miles away. There was Lancaster and Transit, later called Swarmville. There were also the communities of Sheldon, Tonawanda, Lockport, Batavia, and Niagara Falls. At St. John the Baptist in Kenmore, then known as North Bush, Father Neumann first visited their log chapel in 1836 and became their first pastor in 1837. By 1848, the congregation grew large enough to open a school and replaced the log chapel with the present stone church, which today is called the St. John Neumann Chapel. During the 1830s, the young priest, Father Neumann, began to visit the community of St. Mary's in Swarmville, celebrating Mass and administering the sacraments in homes, barns, or fields as conditions warranted. In 1839, at Father Neumann's request, the small community acquired a log house that served as a church for the fledgling congregation. From the handful of families in 1849, St. Mary's has grown to a parish community of over 2,000 families. In 2010, Bishop Edward Kimmick of Buffalo presided over the dedication of a brand new church to support the needs of this growing parish community. St. Mary of the Cataract in Niagara Falls was a mission church of Father Neumann, which grew to become a parish around 1847. It is the oldest Catholic church in Niagara Falls. Today's church includes a permanent shrine of saints' relics displayed in a European-style gated alcove adjacent to the main altar. The relic collection contains over 1,000 individual relics, including one of St. John Neumann himself. Father Neumann's pastorate at Saints Peter and Paul continued until the autumn of 1840, at which time he joined the Redemptorist Society in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He took official leave on October 9th, 1840. He took his vows with the Redemptorists at Baltimore, Maryland in 1841. He was the first Redemptorist to do so in the United States. In 1852, he became Bishop of Philadelphia. Over the course of his life, St. John Neumann built 50 churches and began building a cathedral, along with opening nearly 100 schools. He wrote newspaper articles, 2 catechisms, and many works in German. St. John Neumann died on January 5, 1860, when he collapsed on a city street in Philadelphia. He was just 48 years old. Neumann's date of death, January 5th, is now celebrated as his feast day in the Catholic Church in the United States. John Neumann was beatified by Pope Paul VI during the Second Vatican Council on the 13th of October, 1963, and was canonized by that same Pope on June 19, 1977. He is the first American man and first American bishop to be canonized. Meanwhile, St. John Neumann's legacy in Williamsville lives on today. A parochial school was established in 1837. Classes were held in homes, rented buildings, and a nearby convent until a building for St. Peter and Paul School was erected on the parish grounds in 1893. By 1856, the need for a new and larger church was recognized. A plot of land was purchased from Betsy Grove in 1857. Mrs. Grove's home was moved to make way for the construction of the church. This house then served as the school. The dedication of the new church took place in 1866. This is the church that still stands today. The years have brought many changes in the growth of the parish and school. The parish established by Father Neumann now includes a larger school building, a rectory, and new parish offices. Throughout these years, however, the community has seen the same spirit of enthusiasm, dedication, and loyalty evidenced by both pastors and parishioners, a lasting tribute to the legacy of a great American saint. St. John Neumann, founder of Saints Peter and Paul Church, from frontier to the future.